You are listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. I hope you're having a fabulous day. I hope you're doing well, and I'm so grateful for spending some time with you today to share the work of my incredible guest. His name is Dr. Ross Ellenhorn. He's a pioneer and leader in the development and promotion of community integration services, types of care that serve and empower individuals diagnosed with psychiatric or addiction issues while they remain in their own communities and outside of institutional settings. And he is just out with a new book by HarperCollins. It's How We Change and the 10 Reasons We Don't. And this book takes a deep dive into the dynamics that influence all human change. And that's really what we're talking about today. We're talking about change and, how unavoidable change is, but at the same time, why we cling to sameness and perhaps why that's not so bad, and looking at that in a completely different way. It's going to absolutely change how you look at change, and why looking at that, having that contemplative process is really the key to making any sort of change that's actually lasting and efficacious. So I hope you love this episode. I certainly did. I could speak with Dr. Ellenhorn forever and pick his brain. He's so brilliant, and I'm just so grateful for him sharing his time and his wisdom with all of us. If you love this episode, please share it with at least one friend. Please, of course, leave us a review. Thank you so much for all the reviews coming in. So appreciated. And without further ado, here is my episode with Dr. Ross Ellenhorn. Hey guys, before we dive into this episode, I want to mention show sponsor Hiya Health. Now, typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise. We all know this, and that's why Hiya was created. The pediatrician-approved superpowered chewable vitamin was created by two dads who were tired of children's vitamins that caused more problems than they solve. Now, if you look at a typical children's vitamin bottle, you see that you don't even just give them one, you give them 4, usually per day. That adds up. That's a lot of sugar that you're giving your child, who probably is already eating a lot of sugar now that we're getting closer to Halloween. Really, when your children are growing, they need the very best nutrition. And obviously, diets in America are not where they need to be. So adding a healthy supplement is crucial. And we've worked out an exclusive offer with Hiya Health for their best-selling children's vitamin. This is just for Motherhood Unstressed podcast listeners. You can receive 15% off your first order by going to hiyahealth.com/unstressed, or just entering the code unstressed at checkout. That's hiyahealth.com/unstressed, and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults. Full discount is applied at checkout. This episode is also brought to you by BioLite. In 2005, Dr. Rollins was looking for a way to help his wife stay healthy and hydrated through her chemotherapy treatments. He tried all the popular hydration products, but nothing was effective. As a result, his wife had to resort to IV bags to keep up with her treatments. He decided to develop his own solution, a liquid supplement that offers the same benefits of an IV, but in a drinkable form. And so, BioLite, the world's first IV in a bottle, was created. BioLite is a physician-formulated drink that contains 7.5 more times BioLite is a physician-formulated drink that contains 7.5 times more electrolytes than leading sports drinks, with only 1/3 of the sugar. When you need hydration without sacrificing quality and convenience, BioLite is the answer. It's the best choice for athletes, those recovering from illnesses, those fighting cancer, or anyone just trying to stay hydrated and get healthy. And in honor of October being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, BioLite is offering free bottles to anyone fighting cancer and going through chemotherapy. To redeem this limited time offer, please visit drinkbiolite.com/free bottles. That's drinkbiolyte.com/free bottles to sign up for yourself or gift to a loved one by using the code WARRIOR. Well, hello, doctor. Welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so I'm just, as we were saying before, I'm so fascinated with your work, especially the work of change. But take us back. How did you get into this particular type of work? What drew you to this, specifically the challenges of change?
Well, I can go way back, if that's helpful.
Yeah.
Which is that I think I had a profound experience when I was younger. I lived in a college town that was also a town that was kind of the suburbs for the aerospace industry. And that meant that was a real split in that town in cultures. And I lived on the kind of the hippie professor side of town, and I went to a hippie school, and I did really, really well in that school. I was really kind of respected as this sort of creative kid in that school. And I couldn't spell, and I couldn't do math, and I couldn't really read very well. And then I moved to a junior high that was really for kids from the parents of the aerospace industry. Mm-hmm. And my life got shattered. I got diagnosed as having a severe learning disability. I was placed on track to really be removed from the school, go to the special school and things like that, really stigmatized. And it shifted my entire perspective regarding hope, regarding my sense that my future was in my hands. And the way I cope with it is I began to seriously define myself as disabled. And also I took on this sort of persona as a stoner, and there's a way to kind of protect myself. And years later, as I started to work with people with really significant histories in psychiatric care who've been in and out of hospitals, mm-hmm. and I looked at how they were kind of slowing down their lives, I began to kind of question, is that because of the psychiatric issue, or is it because of the profound social events that have happened to them because of being diagnosed as having a psychiatric issue? And that really started me on course to start the company that I own, which is called Ellenhorn. And it's a company that works with people that have been in and out of the system, really thinking about them as suffering from what we call psychosocial trauma, the trauma mm-hmm. of kind of losing hope in your life. And from that, I developed these 10 reasons not to change, working with these folks. And then that became kind of this topic for the book, because I think that it really applies to all of us. So yeah, I hope that wasn't too long a bio on
no,
my
not at all.
With this, but yeah,
not at all. And I can already tell. I mean, how many mothers listening to this who their children have been, categorized into ADHD or some category, and it completely changes how they see their children, their hope for their children as they age. So I think even just sharing your story on that is giving hope to the mother listening to this right now. But this wasn't your first book. Why did change specifically, come to you, obviously through your work, but how is it that we haven't figured this out yet? Why is it so hard to change? Why is this, I read your book and it's just like, oh, thank you, but there's so many books out there on habits and change and all of that. Like, why are we still struggling with this so much? Mm-hmm.
If you don't mind, I just want to step back for a second, because you mentioned mothers of kids that might have some sort of learning disability. And I want to really clarify my position on that, which is I don't think I have a learning disability. I think that I don't factory learn well. Mm-hmm. And we live in this epidemic of only one kind of learning, and that's hurting a lot of kids. It's making those kids feel like they're incompetent, unable to manage their lives. I mean, you're in an institution that's all about learning, and you're the one that's disabled in learning. That's a profound stigma. They're being medicated, when in reality, they just don't learn the same way as other kids. And what we find is that people with learning disabilities are actually typically do really well as entrepreneurs, as artists, as all kinds of other things that are kind of unconventional. Yeah. And it's very sad that we live in a society that's really looking at kind of placing these round blocks into square pegs, Mm-hmm. This has been my life work on some level, is this idea of why people don't change. Because I work with people who have two problems. One is they're demotivated, and the other is they don't take in help very well. Help feels like it's something dangerous to them. And it's my belief that that's because of those social injuries. And I've also become very frustrated with a world that's all about change instead of a much more powerful force, which is sameness. So, 5 easy steps to right? How to do this. Yeah. And not only are those, do I feel like that kind of way of looking at things is bad for us, because it makes us feel bad if we can't do those 5 quote unquote easy steps, but it treats us as if we're lawnmowers, as if we're machines. Like, how to, is that really how a human being changes their life, is through a how-to book, through a manual? That is terrifying to me, that we live in a culture that sees us in that kind of way. And so I felt like it was important to write a book that was about this other thing, which is contemplating sameness, because sameness is the more powerful force, right, than change. So that
When you
was sort of
say
what led me there.
sameness, do you think, the protocol, like doing what you have always done and just accepting that?
Yeah. Yeah. Doing the thing that feels like it's the opposite of the thing you should change. So, instead of dieting, not dieting, instead of stopping drinking, drinking, yeah. All of those sorts
I
of,
like this book. No.
and finding a way to help people build some affection for sameness. Because I don't think it's a bad thing. It may lead to a less deep life, a less meaningful life, a less enjoyable life, but that doesn't make it bad. Right. And in fact, I'm sort of playing a trick, which is that if I can get you to see sameness as not bad, you're probably actually more willing to let it go. That's a strange thing, but that's really what the science on change tells us, that if you're able to look at the good sides of something you're getting rid of, you're more willing to let it go than if you just see it as tainted and bad.
That's groundbreaking. That's incredible. I mean, can you talk to us a little bit more about, the science and the studies on that? Because I get it, but it's like, I have never heard of this, until your work came along. So talk to us about that. It's fascinating.
Yeah. So there's this concept called the stages of change that comes mostly out of the work with people with problematic habits, what people call addiction. Some of us are resisting the term addiction in some ways, these problematic habits, these habits that get in the way of people having better lives. And it basically says that to change, you have to be in a place of contemplation. So beating someone over the head that they have to change is non-contemplative. Contemplation is where you're weighing the pros and cons. So for someone who's wanting to quit drinking, you're less likely to help them if it's just drinking is bad.
This episode is sponsored by a very cool new company we've discovered called Layer Origin. Layer Origin was founded by a few food science PhDs at Cornell University in New York who have developed the best prebiotic supplement on the market, and it's called Pure HMO. HMOs can be found in human milk and are what nurture the immune system and support the microbiome of infants. Now, don't worry, Pure HMO doesn't actually contain human milk. Instead, it's produced by a precise fermentation and purification process of lactose. But the key is, it effectively replicates HMO and all the benefits. Clinical research shows that HMOs can also benefit immune function, gut health, and brain cognition in adults. Nutrition authors and podcasters like Ben Greenfield and Joel Green have been discussing the benefits of HMO lately as well. There's a lot of excitement about prebiotics right now, and HMO in particular. And listen up, our listeners are eligible for a special discount at amazon.com/layer origin. Just type the code 15PUREHMO at checkout to save 15% when you order Layer Origin's Pure HMO prebiotic. Again, that's amazon.com/layer origin and use the code 15PUREHMO.
Instead of a conversation of what do you get out of drinking? And are you willing to give that up? And let's weigh that to what you gain if you don't drink. That's a better conversation. Yeah. And so we have to find what's good in sameness to know what we're giving up. Otherwise, we're kind of lying to ourselves. We're saying all sameness is bad, all change is good, and that's BS. There's something you're giving up, and so that's why this is what sort of they say. This is how people change. They reach a contemplative place.
Wow. And it seems like that process happened, for the people who do change on their own or with help, it's almost like it happens subconsciously. They don't set out thinking about, okay, I'm going to think about what's really good about these bad habits. It kind of happens on its own. But I feel like bring in that awareness of a situation. I mean, you just give them years, of potential change in their life if that's what they want.
That's right. Yeah. That it's that kind of thinking things through. And, in other words, you're in charge of this event, this change. And so why would steps written by somebody else help you? Those steps can help you, but they have to help you after you've done the contemplation, right? The people that actually use that diet book, almost any diet will work. It's the person who's in that contemplative state that's using that diet where it actually works on them. So it's not that there's nothing wrong with 5 easy steps, but the 5 easy steps come after you've in that place where you're really willing to do it. Otherwise, they're useless. I mean, We just know diets fail. They mostly fail. We know that most substance abuse treatment fails. We know that more people quit drinking and drugging outside of treatment than in treatment. And that the people that do quit drinking and drugging outside of it, their sobriety lasts longer than people that get it in treatment.
Wow.
Now, there's all kinds of reasons for that have to do, the different types of people go to treatment that don't go to treatment, all those sort of things. But there is something also evidence there that there's something about that contemplative state, that place where you're kind of making the decision on your own, that makes this sort of sustainable.
Yeah. That's incredible. So talk to us a little bit about, this was one of my favorite parts of the book where you talk about brokenness and how that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, reading that, I got emotional reading that because I feel like we've all been there. We've all felt like we're broken or we're not good enough or there's something wrong with us because we're not living up to some standard, some arbitrary standard. So talk to us about that.
Well, I saw this ad on TV the other day for the cure for bumps on the back of your arm. I didn't know that was a problem. And
apparently so.
Yeah. And we live in a culture where everything's problematized and where we are really disempowered by these messages about brokenness. They're very dangerous messages, and they get us to consume, right? Because, okay, then I'll go to this treatment. I'll do this thing. I'll do this thing. And they're very shameful, and in human existence is a broken existence. So you're typically kind of diagnosing something that's basically part of our humanity. In my field, we have this term for diagnoses that are called personality disorders. I've never met an ordered personality, right? So I don't know what that is. Attachment disorders. Attachment meaning, I'm disordered in my connections to people. All my connections to people are disordered. I don't have a single connection to someone that's a perfect, flowering, perfect experience.
Right.
And there's beauty in that. That's the beauty in our humanity is this sort of chaos and brokenness, because out of that comes creativity and art and culture. We're not robots, we're not machines. And again, we live in this culture that started treating us more and more like machines that you sort of fix, right? And what are you fixing it for? You're fixing it to conform, to be kind of like everybody else. And I find that very dangerous. And I come from a generation that was reading books that it sounds wild today. When you go into the store today or online and you look at books, it's how to fix your anxiety, how to fix your depression. My generation, we were walking into bookstores, the terror about conformity. People were writing about, we're worried about this encroaching thing of conformity.
Wow. So it was starting then, really.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And conformity won.
Do you think it's a symptom of just capitalism, or do you think it's something greater than that? Do you think it's like, I don't know. Making us all machines, for a greater machine, for that.
I think it has a lot to do with what you could call hyper-capitalism, where every element of your life is made into a commodity, where our bodies and our minds are treated as sellable things. Where we brand ourselves, where all of that stuff. It's part of that. Yeah.
Wow. It's true. You go on social media, everyone is their own brand.
That's right.
Myself included. This podcast and everything, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know, there's got to be a way to shine your light. Like your work is an absolute light to the world. It makes me just kind of like drop my shoulders and be like, okay, my life is good. Like things are good. I don't have to, kill myself or, shame myself for not being up here or, some thing outside of myself. And in a way, like, I'm really grateful that you've been able to brand, your company and your work in that way so that I could find it, the listener could find it. So what's the balance there? What's the balance of having that contemplative process of kind of participating in a way of the capitalistic society that we're in so that the good can come out alongside the conformity?
I didn't know you were going to ask these kind of deep sociological Marxist questions.
You brought it out.
Well, the flip side is there's some just beautiful things going on with the younger generation about identity. That's basically saying you're not going to be able to put a tag on me.
Yeah.
There's fluidity in my gender. There's this kind of greater accepting of other ethnicities and races. There's this called multiculturalism. And that's all stuff that resists the ability for a company to make something out of it. It's not perfect because you're already seeing ads that kind of use that stuff.
Right.
But it is this beautiful dodging, of this control, of this commodification of our experience that really excites me. Largest protest marches in American history happened this year, right? So there's also this kind of remarkable stuff going on that resists it, that resists this kind of commodification.
Yeah, it does give me hope for the future.
Yeah.
But speaking of hope, talk to us about the fear of hope, because that's something I think a lot of people don't know about and should.
Yeah. So this is the kernel of what I learned working with people that have had profound experiences of disappointment, right? But I think it affects all of us. And what I mean by profound experiences of disappointment, people that have been diagnosed as like having a serious psychiatric issue. So we have hope, we have despair, and we live in a world where that's the story, right? You either hope or you're having despair. What we're sort of working on in our research, and what I believed before the research and working with the clients I work with, is that there's something in between those two, which is fearing hope, being afraid of hope. So a person can actually be very hopeful, but it terrifies them. They're like a high diver who's afraid of heights, right? Mm-hmm. And the reason why they're afraid of hope is that every hope does something very interesting. When you hope for something, you make that thing more important than before you hope for it. And you notice you lack it in your life. That's what happens when you hope. And so you're always taking a risk when you hope, because you're making something important you may not get. Hope is the emotion that drives us towards a goal through uncertainty. You don't hope for something you know you're going to get. That's this cheaper emotion called optimism, right? It's going to be great, right? Hope is this thing that's driving you to something that you feel like you should have. And that's a big risk. And so if you've had these experiences of hoping for something and not getting it, you start to fear it. Oh, there's that thing again that's going to get me to that place where I feel bad about myself.
Yeah.
And the bad feeling is awful, which is I can't take care of myself. I can't make my life work. I can't actuate things in my life. And that's primal. I mean, that's what infants feel when they're not cared for, right? Is I'm not able to make things work to get me what I need. And so that's the experience we have when we hope for something and don't get it. And that's why we're afraid of it. All of us are afraid of it, but some people are more afraid of it than the rest of us. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think our fear of hope is more based on early childhood experiences, or could it happen anytime where we like all of a sudden are terrified? This episode is also sponsored by Himalaya Botanique toothpaste. Now, sometimes using natural toothpaste can feel like a trade-off. Sure, it's great to ditch the SLS and artificial flavors, but brushing with a natural toothpaste can feel flat and bland, leaving your mouth with an unclean feeling. Believe me, I've tried many natural toothpastes that either taste like baking soda or I feel like they don't really work. I feel like I need to brush my teeth 2 seconds later. But Himalaya Botanique is a toothpaste that's free from fluoride, SLS, and artificial colors and flavors. But unlike other similar toothpastes, they don't compromise on flavor or performance. Himalaya toothpaste is always bursting with foam and flavor. I think it's the foam that's the most important part to me. I don't know. And that clean feeling overall. And they definitely delivered. So interested in trying it for yourself and ditching the fluoride and SLS? I would be too. So you can get 20% off the Himalaya Botanique toothpaste on Amazon with discount code UNSTRESSED. So check out the show notes for more details on this episode's sponsorship with Himalaya Botanique.
So I think so you're asking me a question about, in some ways, about trait and state, right? So I actually think it can be both. I believe that when we talk about early attachment in childhood, that we may be using the wrong word, that it's about attachment, but it's about hope. When that infant's reaching out towards its mother, because we know now, we've known for the last 20 years that the mother-child interaction is not mother instigated. It's infant and child instigated. The child is playing and making things happen. When that child reaches out and that reach is not reciprocated, that's a moment of hope and despair. Hope is this evolutionary thing that makes us connect, right? We're cultural animals, and we are the only animal that collaborates in order to invent. And to be able to do that means to hope. I have to be able to hope that we'll get along. I have to know that I can kind of get through this with you. And so the first thing an infant's doing is collaborating with the mother. In those moments where it's not getting reciprocal response, it's losing hope. So I actually think that when we talk about attachment disorders, we're talking about hope disorders. I'm afraid of connecting with this person.
Wow.
I'm afraid of that feeling of helplessness. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think we can even be afraid of connecting with ourselves?
Yeah. Yeah. So in adulthood, there's no parent taking care of you. There's you taking care of you. And if you feel like you don't have faith in yourself, that you can get through a disappointment, then you're going to be afraid of hope. Because fear of hope is really based on this other religious word, which is faith. Fear of hope is based on, I don't have faith in myself that I can get through this if it doesn't work out. So our relationships with ourselves become very difficult if we don't have some level of faith in ourselves. So that's trait. State, yeah. Like I know state is an event because this is what I see with my clients. You know, somebody's going to Harvard, they're doing great. Then they have some sort of psychiatric event. They go in the hospital a few times. You know, somebody might say that the illness is what's stopping them from moving forward. I believe it's because all of a sudden the sense of a dream has been destroyed and they're struggling with that.
Wow. So what's the solution then? Do you have one?
Well, I do. But, you know, I did write a self-help book that gives zero advice.
And yet it's wildly more effective.
Yeah. Well, that was kind of I was trying to help people.
That's the whole point, right?
Yeah. I was trying to get people to contemplate on their own, right? But you really can't help people hope. So, you know, you're afraid of heights. You're about to bungee jump, and your friends like telling you, "Go do it, go do it." Who's the person you hate in the world most at that point, right? So, cajoling people to hope doesn't work. Building faith does work. Do I have faith in you as a friend that you'll be there for me if this doesn't work? Can I get good at some things? Can I get good at doing other things in my life so I build faith in myself so that disappointment doesn't destroy me? Mm-hmm. So the target of change should be about faith, not hope. Faithful people are capable of hoping, and we're naturally built to hope. So it's about how do I build faith? And that takes, you know, a faithful relationship with a therapist, a faithful relationship with a friend, and your own ability to feel like you're effective in your life. So there's a term called self-efficacy from social psychology. And basically they've shown that if you can become self-effective in one area, it's generalizable, that your feeling of your own self-efficacy because you've learned how to build pottery will affect how you think about other things in your life.
Yeah, I'm a lifelong learner. Like that's your identity. You can do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Especially, you know, because the core demographic listening here, they're all mothers. So taking this in, not just for themselves, you know, not just for themselves to lose weight or, you know, cut back on drinking or whatever, but to nurture their child, to encourage them that, you know, they can do it on their own. They can figure it out. They've got someone supporting them, you know, no matter what. Like that's life-changing right there. Yeah. And I think, you know, hope is generated in childhood in those moments of attachment with the parent. And to recognize that
when a child is feeling like they're not getting their needs met, that sometimes what their experience is this kind of despair, and to respect that. Now, that doesn't mean overly nurturing your kids, but to respect that there's a despairing event going on. And the other place it's generated is in play. And so to have this kind of profound respect that play is the event that develops hope. And play is really the event that develops the self too. This kind of sense that I'm a person in the world. And so to really kind of respect these moments is very serious in an infant's life, in a child's life, you know?
Did you experience that with your parents? I mean, obviously you went to a hippy dippy school. They were kind of supportive of that, but what was your relationship like with them? You know, the 60s and the 70s, they had a really good side to them, which was this creative side, and they had a really bad side of them, which was a lack of a sense of the importance of boundaries and limits, you know? And so I really love how I was raised in the creative area, but I could have done with more limits, you know? And so I think that there was a shift in the pendulum towards more limits, and we're shifting back and that sort of thing. But that, you know, but the creative side was a great side. You know, my father was a jazz musician, so he understood play and things like that very well. And so in some ways it was delightful, you know. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. And like, who knows, you know, would you be in the spot that you're doing now, helping all these people if they hadn't been that way?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So looking back at your work, obviously you're far from done. Do you feel like you've kind of fulfilled your work's, your life's purpose through this latest book?
Yeah. Yes. Which means that I feel this book and also my company. And so, yeah, so that means I feel a little lost. Maybe
that's a good thing.
Maybe, yeah. It doesn't feel good, but you're right. No, I got, no, it is that moment of hope. It's the moment of, I'm lost. Now I've got to find my way, you know, and, you know, but it doesn't feel comfortable during that period, but that doesn't mean it's bad. Right. But I do feel like, you know, I'm in this place of, well, what's next? And what, how do I regain a sense of purpose now that I've sort of done this other thing, you know? And it's the book, but it's the company. The company's really done well and I feel good about it. But I have to find something new.
I love it. Okay. So, I have some rapid fire questions for you to round it out. I could talk to you for so long. This is amazing. Okay. They're not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Change is.
Oh my Lord. Really?
They're not bad. Here you go.
Well, change is always happening. Even when you're not changing, you're doing something that's changing. We are constantly changing. Living beings, that's what defines living, is that you're always changing.
Yeah. I love that. I'm grateful for.
Oh, I got this great thing going on with my 22-year-old son and his girlfriend living near us and popping in to do their laundry. I think they have so much laundry. I can't believe it. But I'm so grateful for that laundry because they pop in once a day. It's just a joy. And then we have dinner once or twice a week. It's just profoundly warm and happy to have that in my life.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Okay. Last one. What is something that you've learned in life that you wish someone would have told you earlier on?
I guess I really feel like I would have liked to have known more about how important hope is. And that I wish we didn't live in a world that made it either corny or religious, you know, because I've grown to just believe it's earthy. It's not either of those things. And that it should be the thing we're all focused on.
Well, I think through your work, you're absolutely changing the world towards that. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It was great talking to you.
Yeah. So where can our audience find out more about you, your company, get your latest book? Tell us all the things.
Well, the company's on ellenhorn.com. And the book's HarperCollins, so it's you just type in How We Change and my name, and it'll come up.
I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Ellenhorn. This was such a treat. Thank you for your work, your light, and for your laundry machine.
Well, thank you. It was really great. It was really fun. Thanks.
You have been listening to the Motherhood Unstressed podcast, and I'm your host, Liz Carlisle. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so grateful that we got this time together today. And if you love this episode, I would so appreciate it if you would share it out on your social media and make sure to tag us at Motherhood Unstressed. Connect with us at Motherhood Unstressed. I'd love to connect with you and see where the work has gone in the world. And make sure that you subscribe so that you never miss out on an amazing interview with an incredible guest or our weekly guided meditations every Wednesday. Till next time, see ya.